In the early weeks of the Second World War, a German U-boat commander attempts a daring raid into a British naval base. As he deftly navigates between block ships sunk to keep the enemy out, suddenly he spots a chain hidden in the water ahead. It obstructs his path and could ensnare his submarine. He maneuvers quickly to avoid it, a risky move in shallow waters.
If his boat is pinned by the current and turns, there's a great danger that it would be beached.
In World War II, a subsea weapon allows warriors to fight from beneath the waves. With cunning, force, and tenacity, their enemies strike back. Revolutionary, but still sometimes primitive, it's a desperate bid to change the course of war. Their stories are legend. September 4th, 1939, North Atlantic Ocean. In the opening hours of World War II, Hitler has given his U-boat commanders the go-ahead to hunt enemy targets. 300 miles off the coast of France, German U-boat U-47 sits on the surface, having intercepted a merchant freighter. German commander Kapitän Leutnant Günther Prien abides by the submarine protocol.
The protocol says he has to stop the merchantman, search the merchantman, make sure that's a part of the Allied shipping, and then he is allowed to sink it. Otherwise, he had to let it go.
The merchant ship claims to be from neutral Greece. Prien summons the freighter's crew to prove they do not serve the Allied cause. But any interaction with another ship here on the surface could be fatal to a U-boat.
Because they may not stick to the protocol as well. They may attack the submarine by ramming, or they may even be armed and use their artillery to destroy or damage the submarine.
Upon arrival, the crew from the freighter presents their paperwork. Prien must review it and determine if the ship or its cargo poses a threat to the German war effort. The submariners remain on high alert, ready to dive if an emergency appeal from the freighter attracts British forces. Prien finally decides that the ship is Greek and neutral. It only carries resin that is, in fact, en route to Germany. He releases the merchant freighter and its crew. They are free to go. Günther Prien, the 31-year-old commander of U-47, has followed protocol and must continue his search for a clean kill. But hours later, Prien receives word from U-boat headquarters. Hitler is furious. Another German submarine commander, Fritz Julius Lemp, has mistakenly sunk the British ship SS Athenia less than 12 hours after the declaration of war. Bound for Montreal, Athenia carried Americans, Canadians, and refugees fleeing Europe.
For the Germans, the sinking of the Athenia is quite embarrassing. And it resembled very much a Lusitania incident of the First World War, which brought the United States on the brink of entering the war against Germany.
It is exactly the mistake Hitler wanted to avoid when he demanded his U-boat captains follow the submarine protocol. to attack mostly military targets from Britain.
It's very uncomfortable for the Germans that a German U-boat sinks a passenger liner and so creates another incident that could be used by the British for some propaganda purposes. And so they openly deny being responsible for sinking the Athenia.
Hitler orders his U-boat commanders to be even more careful when attacking. Prien must now find a way to sink vessels under tighter scrutiny. The next day, the crew of U-47 spots a vessel zigzagging in the early morning light. Prien draws closer. U-47's gun crew readies again for action.
Submarine!
Prien fires a warning shot to signal the ship, SS Bosnia, to stop.
All ahead, full!
But instead, the freighter tries to bolt.
On this occasion, the captain, rather feisty, decides he wants to get away from the U-boat. He doesn't quite know if he has a speed advantage or not, so he increases speed, signaling all the time SSS, which means that he is being attacked by a submarine.
For German submariners, this scenario confirms the impracticality of the submarine protocol. They must surface to confirm the identity of the ship, but by doing so, make themselves vulnerable to attack.
You might say the U-boats fight in the first weeks of the Second World War with one hand tied on their back.
However, by calling for military support, Bosnia is now an active combatant. So as Bosnia tries to escape, Prien orders his gunners to fire directly into the vessel. The German shells land on target, and a fire breaks out. The British crew scrambles to abandon ship and overturn a lifeboat in the process. As per the submarine protocol, Prien provides assistance to the British sailors and signals a passing Norwegian ship to take the merchant crew on board. Having assured their safety, he readies to torpedo SS Bosnia.
Prien allows most members of his crew to come to the top and have a look. It's the first time that they see a torpedo hit a real target and nobody really knows what will happen.
So unlike Lemp, sinking SS Athenia,
Lemp has to hide what he has done. Prien was conferring to the submarine protocol, and therefore the Reich could claim it as the first submarine kill of the Second World War.
but on September 8th, hours after Prien sinks a third ship, the commander-in-chief of U-boat operations, Commodore Karl Dönitz, recalls Prien. When he arrives in Germany weeks later, Dönitz summons him to meet. On the table in front of Dönitz is a map.
Every German naval officer knew the story of Scapa-Flow from the First World War. It's a place of shame for the German high seas fleet.
Dönitz has an audacious plan to strike a blow against the British Royal Navy in its own port. He offers Günther Prien the job. October 1st, 1939. Commodore Karl Dönitz, Commander-in-Chief of German U-boat operations, presents Kapitän Lieutenant Günther Prien the opportunity of a lifetime. A chance to strike the British fleet in the security of its own port, Scapa Flow.
Scapa Flow is a wonderful anchorage. It's very large. It's been used for a long time. The Vikings used it, but it came to prominence in the First World War when it became the major base for the Grand Fleet.
Located in the Scottish Orkney Islands, Scapa Flow provides access to and protection from both the North Sea and the Atlantic Ocean.
And it allows a fleet there to stop enemy ships coming out into the Atlantic, or to attempt to, and also to engage in blockade of Germany.
Already during World War I, the British secured the three main entrances with submarine nets, sunken block ships, and even mines. Multiple German U-boat crews tried to break in. The last attempt was in 1918, when the captain of UB-116 believed he found a way through. The German commander reasoned that the main channel into Scapa was so busy with Allied ships that it must be free of mines.
Periskop unten. Kleine Fahrt.
He submerged and headed straight for the front entrance. But the German commander was horribly mistaken. As the submarine unknowingly passed over a detection system, an induction loop detonated the entire minefield. Blowing the submarine and its crew to pieces. Now, despite the obstacles, Dönitz believes a skilled submarine commander could penetrate the defenses. They present aerial reconnaissance photos and point out a gap in the British stronghold. Although most approaches into Scapa Flow appear protected, the British have yet to fully secure one of the channels to the main harbor. With a combination of skill and luck, a U-boat might sneak through and into the lion's den. After only a day of contemplation, Günther Prien agrees to lead the secret mission, codenamed Special Operation P. But in order to plan effectively, Prien brings his first watch officer and navigator into his confidence. They pore over tidal charts and reconnaissance photos to identify a suitably dark high tide. They select Friday, October 13th, during the new moon, when the skies would be darkest. The moon phase also means higher tides, which would allow U-47 to navigate the shallow channels into Scapa Flow. They also realize that this new moon is a so-called supermoon, which occurs only a few times a year as the moon travels closest to Earth. This increases the upper range of high tide just a little bit more. But October 13th is less than a week away, and Prien must finalize their plan and equip his submarine U-boat U-47. The operation remains a secret. Prien cannot share details of their mission with the rest of the crew. So they load the U-boat with the bare minimum of food and fuel, not knowing their destination is the Orkney Islands. They replace most of their compressed air torpedoes with electric-driven ones to gain a tactical advantage. During the 1920s, the Reichsmarine, or German Navy, defied the Versailles Treaty and developed the G7E torpedo in secret.
The older torpedoes were driven by pressurized air, and so they left a kind of bubble trail, making the course of the torpedo visible, giving also some kind of information about the position of the U-boat.
Although a little slower, the electric-driven G7E leaves no trail of bubbles, which could prove a critical advantage in the close quarters of Scapa Flow. They also remove classified materials from the U-boat, in case the plan fails. Within days, they are ready. U-47 quietly casts off and pushes north toward the Orkney Islands. After moving into open ocean, his crew would notice that Preen has changed his tactics completely from his first patrol. He now travels only under the cover of darkness. At the hint of a surface contact, they dive out of sight.
During the last journey, he was very aggressive, using daylight to spot the enemy, to destroy enemy merchant shipping. And now he's hiding and not attacking anything in between.
For Günther Preen's crew, they must wonder if their commander has lost his mind or his nerve. October 12, 1939. Captain Lieutenant Günther Preen, commander of the German submarine U-47, sails into the North Sea. Now on their second war patrol, most of the crew is unaware of their secret mission: to infiltrate one of Britain's key naval bases, Scapa Flow. After days of cautious tactics, U-47 surfaces after dark into a gale-force storm.
Traveling on the surface in a severe storm or even a gale is a terrible thing, because it's a very small vessel and it's smashed around by the waves.
Topside, it is almost impossible to spot any threats. It is also physically uncomfortable for the crew, particularly those below deck, some of whom become seasick.
We're sitting down deck in a tiny steel tube with the smell of diesel oil, unwashed bodies, which is not exactly adding to the comfort.
Despite the weather, Preen is on a strict schedule to reach the Orkneys.
Time is pressing. He only has a very short window. He has to attack Scapa Flow in the night of the 13th to the 14th of October.
Preen plows through on the surface to continue the crossing at his greatest speed, rather than diving to avoid the rough seas. After the long night of battering, it is likely a relief as Preen brings U-47 to rest on the sea floor off the coast of Scotland. But their stormy passage has taken its toll. Engineers discover seawater in the lubricating oil, which Preen knows could compromise their mission at a critical moment. He cannot take that chance.
The real danger of contaminated lubricating oil is risking a severe motor damage. In the very moment you try to sneak in defended anchorage like Scapa Flow, where you simply need all the systems ready for action.
The men hurry to change the oil, repair the damage, and get U-47 back into fighting shape. With the stormy night and mechanical repairs behind them, Preen gathers his tired crew to finally reveal their mission.
Well, I believe that the reaction of the crew of U-47, when they learned about the objective of their patrol, was a mixture between excitement and fear. It wasn't entirely a suicide mission, but it held a high risk of not return home safely.
The name Scapa Flow would be instantly recognizable.
Especially in the German perception, the heart of British sea power. It was the major naval base in the First World War, where the British Grand Fleet, the battle fleet, was gathered.
After Germany's defeat in World War I, the British detained the German fleet within Scapa Flow. And where the German captains sank their own ships to prevent them from falling into enemy hands.
So it was also the idea to revenge this kind of humiliation.
Now the crew of U-47 has the opportunity to hit the British Navy at home and reclaim honor for the fatherland. But while Prien believes they can get into Scapa Flow, once they wake up the harbor with torpedo fire, he is not as confident that they can escape, so they must be ready to prevent German U-boat technology from falling into British hands. He orders the crew to rig their submarine with scuttling charges, so they can set off the explosives in case of capture. At last, on Friday, October 13th, 1939, Prien gives the order to surface and begin their final approach into Scapa Flow. Prien, his first watch officer and navigator, selected this night with a near-invisible new moon to make their way in the pitch black to avoid detection. Instead, they are greeted by a sky full of the flickering illumination of the aurora borealis, the famous northern lights. Now, without the protection of darkness, nature may scuttle their stealthy plan. October 1939. Captain Lieutenant Günther Prien, commander of U-boat U-47, carefully planned an attack on the British naval base of Scapa Flow for a moonless night. But instead of the cloak of darkness, he finds himself amidst the bright lights of the aurora borealis.
But he knows that he only has a very small time window and only one chance. That's kind of his chance of a lifetime.
Prien gives the order to set course to continue the mission. He directs the nearly 220-foot-long U-boat toward a northeast entrance into Scapa Flow. It is a smaller passage off Home Sound, the northern arm called Kirk Sound, just southeast of the fishing village of St. Mary's. The route is cluttered with partially submerged block ships, sunk by the British to keep out enemy vessels. The aerial reconnaissance photos indicate a gap wide enough to navigate a U-boat through, with about 50 feet to spare. But they need to seek out the deepest water. Even extra inches may make the difference. Prien calls out directions from the bridge as he tries to make his way past. They have carefully calculated that this night will give them their best chance for success, but their timing needs to be exact. Prien had raced to arrive at the start of slack water, just after the tide is highest.
Slack water is a period of 50 minutes when there's no tidal current. Water is not flowing in or out of Scapa Flow, and it means that boats can maneuver on the surface much more easily without the current pushing or pulling.
But this plan has already failed. Prien has missed slack water by 22 minutes. This means the tide has begun to fall. It also creates another problem.
Since Prien misses slack water, the current is pushing U-47 from behind, and it means that the boat is less maneuverable and it threatens to push the stern of the boat to one side.
The tidal current will make it even more difficult to navigate between the block ships which funnel water through the narrow gap. Prien's coordination with his navigator must be perfect to maneuver through. Prien passes the first block ship on his right, or starboard side. He proceeds between the shore and the second block ship, keeping to the channel where the water is deepest. As the currents begin to push his stern, he spots a problem. An anchor chain, imperceptible on the aerial reconnaissance photos, stretches out from one of the hulks and directly across Prien's path.
The anchor chain is attached to the bow of one of the block ships. It's meant to hold the block ship in place within Kirk Sound. It's not meant to prevent enemy incursion.
Nevertheless, Prien recognizes the threat. He sees the chain too late and must now react quickly as he fights the currents.
Due to the current pushing its stern, the stern is pushed into this anchor chain.
This could prove disastrous.
If his boat is pinned by the current and turns, there's a great danger that it can stuck to the ground. And if the tide is lowering, it would be beached. The whole mission would be a blunder.
The submarine swings dangerously close to the shore. Despite timing their arrival to the high tide, its keel scrapes the sea floor. Prien orders a hard, quick turn to avoid the chain. And the starboard engines slow ahead to assist the current to pivot them past the obstacle. The chain drags across the hull, ready to snare anything. While U-47's stern begins to rotate. Finally, the U-boat skids free and slides past.
His quick reaction at that point saved the day for him.
But even with the block ships behind them, the threats remain.
They're going to pass within 800 metres of the village of St Mary's on the surface using electric motors, which are much quieter than the diesel-electric engines.
This close to shore, there is still a real risk of being seen or heard. Beyond the fishing village, the water deepens, and U-47 enters the harbor.
They are the first submarine inside Scapa Flow in the Second World War.
But, according to some accounts, there is a flash of light from shore. It is at this moment U-47 is nearly spotted. October 14th, 1939, the Scottish Orkney Islands. Captain Lieutenant Gunter Prien, commander of the U-boat U-47, has managed to sneak into the British harbor of Scapa Flow. But before he can complete his raid to attack British ships, a light from shore reportedly illuminates his submarine. It seems to be a headlight from the village of St. Mary's, less than half a mile away. Not sure if they were spotted, Prien has no choice but to continue into the main harbor, in search of the British capital ships he was sent here to sink.
According to the latest reconnaissance, Dönitz expected Prien to find an anchorage full of ships.
But to Preen's dismay, he cannot find a single target.
He expects battleships or aircraft carriers, and they are gone.
Preen abandons the main anchorage and pushes further north. After nearly an hour of searching, they spot a large silhouette in the distance. Based on the profile and reconnaissance information, they believe they see a Royal Sovereign-class battleship in the foreground, and behind, the battlecruiser HMS Repulse. They are about 3,300 yards away, and in the darkness, they are wrong about Repulse.
HMS Repulse is north in Scapa Flow. The battlecruiser left. The only vessel to the north is a small seaplane carrier, HMS Pegasus. So it may be the case that he saw what he expected to see.
But Preen is correct about the Royal Sovereign-class battleship. He has found a capital ship. It proves to be HMS Royal Oak, an enduring symbol of British First World War naval might. She performed valiantly during the Battle of Jutland and is still one of Britain's largest and most heavily gunned battleships.
Royal Oak is a frontline unit of the British Home Fleet. Her only weakness is that she's rather slow, possibly because of the extra armour she'd been fitted with. She has a modern anti-aircraft armament, she's very powerful with her 8 15-inch guns, and therefore she is a very useful asset.
Despite her age, HMS Royal Oak is still a formidable vessel and a legitimate target. In mid-October 1939, about 1,200 crew members serve on board Royal Oak. 120 are aged 18 or under, known as boy seamen who have come aboard for training. While the crew of Royal Oak sleeps, Preen lines up his shots. Just after 0100, he fires his first salvo. Two torpedoes hurtle towards HMS Royal Oak, and one at what he believes is HMS Repulse. After 3 minutes, a single small explosion. Aboard HMS Royal Oak, the British are slow to realize the danger they are in. The first torpedo had struck the very front of the 620-foot battleship, causing anchor chains to break, but relatively little other damage.
The crew hear the bang and vibration from the first torpedo, and a lot of them come out of their hammocks and go up on deck to investigate what has happened.
The captain and other officers appear. Teams spread out to inspect the ship, but the general alarm is not sounded. Meanwhile, on board U-47, Gunter Preen must decide whether he should run for safety or risk another salvo.
The more dangerous decision is to stay inside Scapa Flow and have a second attack.
Preen decides to ready his bow tubes for a better shot at the battleship.
So after the first salvo of torpedoes misfired, Preen faced a severe problem because he needs to reload his bow torpedo tubes.
Normally, a submarine will withdraw from the action and submerge to reload beneath the surface, which is the safest approach. But Gunter Preen has no intention of playing it safe. October 14th, 1939, Scottish Orkney Islands. Captain Lieutenant Gunter Preen has just fired a salvo of torpedoes toward a battleship in the British naval base of Scapa Flow. With no apparent damage to the ship, Preen orders his crew to reload their bow tubes on the surface, which will take at least 10 minutes. A very long time for a submarine in the middle of an enemy harbor.
It may have been like an endless time to the crew, but you have to keep in mind the crew has to work. So the men on the bridge have to scan the horizon, other men have to reload the torpedoes. So probably the time is passing faster than we would expect.
During the reload, Preen maneuvers his U-boat and fires his single stern torpedo. This torpedo also misses. On board HMS Royal Oak, the loud bang from the first torpedo roused some of the British crew. Teams investigate minor flooding and the smell of smoke. They have no idea that an enemy submarine has snuck into the harbor.
Fundamentally, the Home Fleet wasn't expecting a German U-boat to be in the flow at all.
Meanwhile, Preen's crew has reloaded his bow tubes, and he moves U-47 into position to fire another salvo toward the famous battleship. The torpedoes run true. All three strike, only seconds apart.
There are massive explosions. Cordite charges are ignited, which cause flame to go through compartments and burn many, many hundreds of Royal Oak crewmen. The Royal Oak then turns over, and these sailors are either drowned or burned or entombed within the mighty Oak as she sinks to the depths of Scapa Flow.
The once prestigious battleship and symbol of British naval power sinks in about 13 minutes. But Günther Preen does not wait to watch the Royal Oak's demise. Worried that he will be trapped in Scapa Flow by a British counterattack, he engages his diesel engines.
After the final salvo, Preen and his crew are not concerned so much with stealth. They want to get out as quickly as possible, so they make for full speed ahead towards Kirk Sound.
Preen must now decide how to get out of Scapa Flow.
It's past high tide. The water in Kirk Sound is shallower, so he cannot take to the northern channel at all. He has to take to the southern channel, which is deeper.
It is now nearly 90 minutes past slack water, and Preen must fight the heavy tide pushing him back into the harbor.
The current is estimated at 8 knots against the U-boat. Günther Preen feels he's making no progress.
Slowly, U-47 fights its way through the currents of Kirk Sound and breaks free from the Orkney Islands. It will be 45 minutes after Preen escapes, before the British launch a destroyer to look for an enemy submarine. As German Commodore Karl Dönitz predicted, the attack shatters British confidence in Scapa Flow. Ships are relocated to other naval bases while it is secured. During the transfers, the British lose another battleship and cruiser. They strike mines laid by Dönitz's U-boats. Of the 1,200 crew aboard HMS Royal Oak, 833 perished in the attack, including 48 of the 120 boy sailors. The death of so many teenage boys creates a public outcry in Britain, causing the British Navy to outlaw boy sailors aboard active naval vessels.
The sinking of Royal Oak is a tremendous shock to the Royal Navy. It comes at a bad time, and to have a battleship, especially with a name like Royal Oak, sunk in Scapa Flow is a disgrace, really, and it is quite a blow to British morale. And even Churchill is forced to pay tribute to the skill of Captain Lieutenant Prien.
Gunter Prien and his crew are welcomed in Germany as heroes and flown in Hitler's personal plane to Berlin. The celebration happens so quickly, some do not have a chance to change into their dress uniforms.
In this case, you recognize them as submariners. They look like coming from the front, from the war effort, and not from a peacetime harbor.
They are all awarded the Iron Cross Second Class for their part in the raid. Hitler personally decorates Gunter Prien with the Knight's Cross of the Iron Cross, the first submariner of this new war to be so honored. Joseph Goebbels, Hitler's Minister of Propaganda, uses Gunter Prien as the first Nazi hero of the war.
After that, he becomes part of the propaganda machine in Germany. And so he's a built-up war hero, something like today a rock star or today a great sportsman. On the one hand, Prien is used by the propaganda machine, but on the other hand, he loved it. Every schoolboy in Germany knew him at this point, and he traveled around in Germany talking about what happened at Scapa Flow, and he really enjoyed it. So it's a quid pro quo.
After the raid, Karl Dönitz is promoted to Rear Admiral.
In Dönitz's eyes, the raid on Scapa Flow is a huge success. Although only an old, outdated battleship has been sunk, nevertheless, in propaganda terms, it's a great success. He has proven the worth and the capacity of his U-boats and crews, and this gives him a good argument to build up the U-boat arm as the main weapon of the Kriegsmarine.
Prien would continue to shine as one of Germany's top U-boat aces and sinks 31 Allied ships. On March 7th, 1941, U-boat headquarters receives one last message from U-47, just before an attack on an Allied convoy between Iceland and Scotland. It is reported sunk. No one knows its true fate. The British, reeling from Prien's attack, sacked the admiral in charge of the Orkneys and add significant anti-submarine defenses to the harbor, including the Churchill barriers that still connect the islands today. No enemy submariner since Gunter Prien has breached the harbor's defenses since.